Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Shabbos Daf is a long daf with a few disparate discussions. We're in the middle of a conversation about the Benos Tzalavchad and who Tzalavchad was and what he did. That'll bring us to a discussion about Tzaras and what causes it. Then we will return to the machlokes about throwing an object from one rishus to another through an intervening rishus. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss the opposite case where it went from rishus hayachid to where it went from rishus harabim to rishus harabim through rishus hayachid. And along the way, we'll discuss the source of the halacha called lavud, and we're going to want to know, can you possibly bring two chatos for an av and a tolda done together according to anybody? And we'll end off with a discussion about what happens when you do half of your intended melacha or twice as much as your intended melacha. Do you have to bring a carbon chatos for that? So let's see the daf. The daf begins in the middle of a conversation between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. Rabbi Kiva said two things which Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira took issue with because it was not explicit in the Pesukim. So the first one we had begun to see yesterday, which was who was Tzalachad and why did he die in the Midbar. So Rabbi Kiva said he was the Mekosher Jesim, he was the one who gathered together the wood, and he was given the death penalty for being Mechal Shabbos. Yehuda ben Meseira says you can't say that. The pasuk doesn't say it. What do I do? I have to say it. He wasn't that. Instead, he was one of the Ma'afilim. He was one of the people who went up to try to go to Eretz Yisrael after Hashem said that they have to stay in the desert for 40 years. Okay, next thing Rabbi Kiva said is about Tzaras, and then the Gemara will go from there to another discussion of Tzaras and a related topic as well. So, first of all, Rabbi Kiva says that when Aaron and Miriam were discussing Moshe Rabbeinu's divorce of his wife, and Miriam was punished with Tzaras for speaking bad against Moshe, Aaron was punished as well. How do you know? Because the Psukim describe that when Hashem called the three of them out, and Hashem was upset with them, and he left. So it says, Vayicher av Hashem and bam vayelach, and Hashem's anger flared against them, and he left. So, bam, flared against them. That means that they both suffered from it. So it was Miriam and Aaron who both received Tzaras. This is what Rabbi Kiva says. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira says, how could you say that? How can you say that? If it's true, the Torah didn't say it, what business do you have to say it? And if it's not true, so then you're just speaking Lashon Hara, you're speaking Moshe Shemer about Aaron. So Gemara says, what do you mean? But it says them. It's clearly written. It says Hashem was upset with them. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira holds that just means that Hashem was upset with both of them. It doesn't mean that they both had Tzaras. Now the Gemara brings a brisa that says, like Rabbi Akiva, that Aaron was also struck with Tzaras, but his healed right away, because it says, Vayifen Aaron al Miriam v'hidem Tzaras. Aaron turned to Miriam, and she had a Tzaras. He turned from his own Tzaras when that was cured, and he saw that Miriam still had hers. Okay, next thing is, the Gemara says, that somebody who suspects others of doing something wrong will end up being struck with a problem on his own skin. How do you see that? Because when Hashem sent Moshe to speak to Klal Yisrael, Moshe said, Klal Yisrael is not going to believe me. And Hashem said, Klal Yisrael is going to believe. They are maminim b'nei maminim. You're the one who is not going to believe. That's why it says later that Klal Yisrael trusted Moshe, but Moshe later at the when he hit the rock, Hashem said to him, Yan loy he'emantem bi. You did not trust me. Now, what happened to Moshe as a result of his lack of trust in Klal Yisrael, as a result of his suspecting that Klal Yisrael received Tzaras? Like it says when he was discussing with Hashem this conversation, he put his hand in his cloak, and when he took it out, it had Tzaras. Now the Gemara learns another thing from that discussion. It says that punishment is slower to arrive than reprieve, because when he put his hand into his cloak and received the Tzaras, it says, he took his hand out, and it had Tzaras. It means that the Tzaras came upon it as he pulled it out. However, when he put it back in to cure it, it says, he pulled it out from being in his cloak, and flesh had healed. That means that when it was right away, it has the extra word mechekoi in his cloak. When it was already put into his cloak, it was already healed. He didn't see it till it was pulled out, but healed faster than it was originally struck. Now the Gemara adds one thing. It says that Vayivala Mati Aaron is Mataisim, when Aaron and Moshe showed the signs to Parai got his witchcrafters to do the same thing, but then Aaron's stick swallowed up their sticks. The Gemara says that was already after they turned back into sticks, and it was a miracle that Aaron's that one stick was able to swallow up other sticks. Okay, that ends this discussion. The Gemara now goes to the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan about throwing an object from Rishos Hayachid to Rishos Hayachid across Rishos Rabbim. We had seen that Rabbi Akiva holds that is an Isser D'Oraisa, and the Rabbanan hold that it is not. What is this machlokas about? So here's what we're going to have. We're going to divide the case into three possibilities, three zones. And each zone has its own issue. And now we're going to have three opinions as to what exactly the issue is between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, and therefore what exactly the case of the machlokas is. So first of all, what are the zones? The zones are, did the object in its flight pass within 3 tvachim of the ground? Or was it from 3 tvachim to 10 tvachim of the ground? Or was it above 10 tvachim of the ground? Now, what are the issues as follows? If it's above 10 tvachim of the ground, it never passed through Rishos Rabbim. Rishos Rabbim only extends 10 tvachim up from the ground. It never passed through Rishos Rabbim, passed over Rishos Rabbim. The only way that could be usher is if there's a special Gzeis Kasav, which is learned out of the fact that the Levim passed the boards of the Mishkan from one to another over Rishos Rabbim. Now, that says by passing from hand to hand. The question then, the issue would be, can we learn from there that throwing is also included in this special halacha, that even though it goes over Rishos Harabim, it's still usher. It doesn't go through Rishos Harabim, it goes over. Can we learn out of the fact that passing from hand to hand is usher, a special pasuk, that throwing is also usher? That would be the issue if the machlokas was above 10 tfachim. If it's between 3 tfachim to 10 tfachim, then the issue would be a concept called kluta. It is definitely passing through Rishos Harabim, but it never stops. So here we don't have to come to psukim, leviim, krushim, hand to hand. We don't have to come to any of that. The question is, can you view the flying object in freeze frame that it stopped in Rishos Harabim as if it stopped in Rishos Harabim, and therefore you have passed it from Rishos Hayachid to Rishos Harabim, and that is a complete Isser D'Oraisa. So later it continues on in mid-flight to Rishos Hayachid, but is it viewed as if it's frozen and stopped in Rishos Harabim? That would be the Isser. That would be the issue. That's called kluta. The question is, do we say that or not? That could be the machlokas. Now, if you say that between 3 tfachim and 10 tfachim, it's more likely that you'll say that below 3 tfachim, because we have a rule that anything within 3 tfachim is considered to be on the ground mamish. That's a later discussion, which we'll have later in this Gemara. So, what is the case of this machlokas exactly? So the Gemara brings 3 opinions. So first of all, we have the opinion of Rav Hamnuna, who says that there is no machlokes about above 10 tvachim. That is not an issue. That is not an issue. We all agree that we do not learn throwing out of passing. That's not an issue. The machlokes is about kluta. Do we say freeze frame? Do we say freeze frame, and therefore it's considered to be frozen, and it is carrying when it freeze frames in Rishos Harabim? Now, the opinion of Rav Hamnuna doesn't specify what happens if it's below 3 tfachim. Then the next opinion is Rabbi Elazar, who says that no, the machlokas is in all 3 situations, because the Rabbanan and Rabbi Akiva argue about both concepts. They argue, do we learn throwing out of passing, and therefore above 10 tfachim there is a machlokas. Also, within 10 tfachim we have the same machlokas. Do we hold a freeze frame? Do we hold a kluta or not? So he says that machlokas applies in all cases. Now the last opinion is Rav Chilkiah Bar Toivi, who says no, the machlokas is only in the middle case. Passing from throwing above 10 tfachim, throwing learned from passing above 10 tfachim, nobody holds up. We do not learn that, and therefore it's completely not usher if you pass it that high. If it's within 3 tefachim of the ground, everybody agrees that there's freeze frame because it's considered to be on the ground. The question is, what is with the middle case between 3 and 10 tefachim? Do we say freeze frame or not? Now, Rav Hamnuna could agree to this. Rav Hamnuna didn't say what's below 3 tefachim, so we don't know if he would agree with it or not. But both Rav Hamnuna and Rav Chilkiah Bar definitely don't fit with Rav Elazar, who says that the machlokas is in all situations. Now, the Gemara quotes Brises to support 2 of these positions. The Gemara first brings a brisa to support Rav Hamnuna's opinion that the entire machlokas is in a situation where it's within 10 tefachim, And the Brisa says as follows: if somebody transfers an object from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaYachid, passing through Rishus HaRabim itself, not above Rishus HaRabim, through Rishus HaRabim itself, that's the machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. So Rav Hamnuna says this has to be referring to where he threw it. It can't be that he was carrying it, because carrying is forbidden for sure, even above 10 Tvachim. That we learned earlier, because the Bnei Kahas carried the Aron above 10 Tvachim. So this Brisa is clearly referring to through Rishus HaRabim himself in the 10 Tvachim, within 10 Tvachim, and it says that is a machlokes. This clearly supports Rav Hamnuna's opinion. Now, Rav Elazar's opinion, we do not have a Brisa to support, but we do have one to support Rav Chilkiah bar Tevi, who says that the machlokes is only between 3 and 10, but above 10 there's no machlokes, everybody agrees it's permitted, and below 3 everybody agrees is forbidden. And the Brisa says as follows: within 3 Tvachim everybody agrees is Aser. Above 10 Tvachim is only a possible Isser D'Rabbanan, this Brisa brings in, and that's if you are throwing from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid, so if it's separate owners, you have to have an Erev Chatzeris Midrabanan. Not an Erev Chatzeris is a problem. It's the same owner of the two Rishuyos, then it's not an issue. But the Machlokes is where it's between the two, where it's between 3 Tvachim and 10 Tvachim, so that is the opinion of Chilkiah bar Tevi. Okay, that concludes the Gemara's explanation here. Now, the Gemara says, hold on a second, you just said that if you throw from roof to roof, you got a problem of Erev Chatzeris. That was a machlokes, no? That was Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel had a machlokes whether or not you're allowed to throw an object from one roof to another roof. So Rav said it's aser, but here we see that if they both belong to the same person, it's not a problem. So why would Rav say it's aser? Where says no, Rav was referring to a case where the roofs weren't the same height, and therefore we're afraid that you're going to throw and you're going to miss. And if you miss, it's going to fall between the two roofs, it's going to land on the Rishus HaRabim, and then you're going to go pick it up from there. That would be carrying, and that's why Rav says that is forbidden. Having mentioned the halacha that something within 3 Tvachim of the ground is considered to be on the ground, the Gemara wants to know what is the source of the halacha of a lavud. Lavud says that anything within 3 Tvachim is considered to be already there, which is 3 applications. One is what we just said, anything within 3 Tvachim of the ground is considered on the ground. Another application is that a wall that extends to within 3 Tvachim of the ground is considered to go all the way down. Like, for example, your sukkah wall is considered to go all the way down. And another application is that something which reaches to within 3 Tvachim from the ceiling, or to something above it, is considered like it reaches all the way up. Now, that applies to sukkah, that applies to Erev, that applies to a number of circumstances. These are all the rule of lavud. The Gemara wants to know what's the source for this. So the Gemara first of all says, well, it's very simple. You can't view Rishus HaRabim as being perfectly flat. As you can't insist that Rishus HaRabim has to be perfectly flat. If it's an inch high, you're going to say that, oh, it's not Rishus HaRabim anymore? Obviously, that's not acceptable. So you have to be able to include a certain amount of bumps and lumps within Rishus HaRabim. So we say up till and including 3 Tvachim should be included. So the Gemara says, hold on a second, but then you should include 3 Tvachim itself. But the halacha of lavud is only under 3 Tvachim. But it's very normal to find lumps within that are 3 Tvachim high within Rishus HaRabim. So the Gemara says, and I have another kasha, and that's how does that explain when the sukkah wall doesn't reach the floor? What does that have to do with Rishus HaRabim being flat? So the Gemara says, oh no, that's a different halacha. The sukkah wall reaching the floor, that's because that's a functional wall. It keeps out everything. Even a gedi, a goat, can't walk through if it's 3 Tvachim from the ground. If the gap is less than 3 Tvachim from the ground. The Gemara says, that's very nice for the bottom of the wall. What about the top of the wall? So Gemara says, you're right. Okay, the halacha of lavud is really halacha of Moshe Sinai. It's a rule which is given over to Moshe, and there is no necessarily understandable human logic behind it. Gemara now returns to the subject of throwing an object from one rishus to another rishus across the middle rishus. Here it's going to be the reverse. You threw from Rishus HaYachid, you threw from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaRabim, passing through Rishus HaYachid. So we're going to have a machlokes about that, and then the Gemara is going to try to figure out, based on this, what do we hold about being obligated to carbon chatais for an av and a tolda in the same category. We'll try to figure out Rebbe's opinion in that, and we'll try to figure out Rabbi Yehuda's opinion in that. So first of all, the machlokes is the brisa. The chachamim say if somebody throws from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaRabim passing through Rishus HaYachid, the chachamim say he didn't do anything wrong, and Rabbi says he's chayiv. So the Gemara explains Rabbi is referring to a case where the Rishus HaYachid was roofed. It's like it threw it flew through a house, in one window and out the other. If it just went over a yard, it's not a problem. Why? Because in a house you have a concept called kiman demalya damyo, which is that it's considered filled up. And then it's much easier to view the object when it's flying inside the house as if it's frozen, because the house is filled to the roof, halachically, and therefore the object came to rest. Now the Gemara says, Rav Chanas and Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, that Rebbe actually says you have two chata'os you have to bring. There's two Yisur D'Oraisa, you have to bring two carbon chata'os. Why? Because you threw from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. That's one. And then the object flew from Rishus HaYachid out to Rishus HaRabim, and it's considered like it rested in the middle. So that's two Yisurim. One where you went from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, and one where you went from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. That's an Avana Tolda. One is Hoitzah, carrying out from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. One is Hachnasa, bringing in from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. That is an Avana Tolda. You can't have two Chiyav Chatayis, you can't bring two Karbonos for doing an Avana Tolda together, a main category and a subcategory, because you only get one for that. Obviously, he didn't remember that it was forbidden in between when the two things happened while it was flying. That doesn't make sense. And we know the Rebbe says that you cannot have to bring two separate chatayis. How do you know? Because that is a halacha that we learned out of the list of 39 malachos. We said there are 39 malachos, and the reason we give the number 39 is to teach you that you can bring up to 39 separate chatayis for each av, but not for an av and a tolu together. Now, Rebbe himself says this number 39. He says a brisa, in which he says that you learn that there are 39 from the phrase Eila Hadvarim. Dvarim is multiple is 2, Hadvarim extra word is 3, and Eila is gematria 36. So it's 39 altogether. So anyway, you see that Rebbe holds that you can't have a separate Chiyav Chatas for an av and a tolu together. So how could he say here? How could Rav Yehuda Mishmul say here that you throw an object from Rishus HaRabim through Rishus HaYachid out to Rishus HaRabim again in one shot, that it's two Chiyav Chatas? So the Gemara says that Rav Yosef answered this to Rav Chana, and he says not a problem, because you applied this teaching of Rav Yehuda Mishmul to the wrong thing. You applied it to Rebbe. It wasn't really supposed to be applied to Rebbe. It's not where they said it. Rav Yehuda Mishmul said it on something that Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, said. Not Rebbe. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that you could have two separate Chiyav Chatayis, two separate Karbanas you would have to bring for doing an Av and a Holda. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? So we have a Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda is referring to somebody who threw an object from Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim, and then it flew 4 amas distance in Rishus HaRabim and it landed. So the Chachamim say he's Pater. He doesn't have to bring a carbon, and Rabbi Yehuda says he does. Now, says Rabbi Yehuda says you have to bring 2 karbanos. Why? Because as soon as it entered Rishus HaRabim, it's viewed as if it's frozen, and that's a Chiyav Chatas. It went from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Then, when it transfers, when it moves another 4 amas, from freeze frame to freeze frame, that's another Chiyav Chatas. And that's a tolda, because that's moving 4 amas within Rishus HaRabim is a tolda of carrying. It's an av and a tolda, and you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds you have to bring 2 karbanos. The Gemara says, 1 second. Who said Rabbi Yehuda says you have to bring 2? Where did you get that from? We always saw is that Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim argue whether or not you have to bring a carbon. So Rabbi Yehuda Mishmul says, what do you mean? Because the Rabbanan couldn't possibly hold, you don't have to bring anything. A guy threw an object from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. For sure he has to bring a carbon. The machlokes must be you have to bring 2 karbanos. So Gemara says, no, maybe the machlokes says, well, you have to bring 1. Because the Rabbanan could hold, you don't have to bring any. Why? Because the guy, when he threw it, had in mind that it should stop as soon as it entered Rishus HaRabim. It should land right there and stop there. What ended up happening? It flew further. So his wish was not fulfilled, and therefore he doesn't have to bring a carbon chatas for that. He didn't want it to keep traveling, so his goal was not fulfilled. He doesn't have to bring a carbon for that. Rabbi Yehuda, though, says he does, because we say freeze frame. We say as soon as it enters Rishus HaRabim, freeze that frame, and consider like it stopped there. Then it went further, that's another thing. Fine, but there's only one Chiyav Chatas. For when it originally entered Rishus HaRabim, freeze frame, the guy's wish was fulfilled, then it continued to go. That's a separate thing. That does not take away from this obligation to bring a carbon chatas based on what he did so far. So the Gemara says, okay, you're trying to prove that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold you can get 2 karbanos for an av and a tolda, but there's no point because I can prove to you from elsewhere that he holds that. Because we have a brayso that says that there are 39 malachas, but Rabbi Yehuda adds 2 more to the list. He adds, if you straighten out the threads, you line them up, and if you smooth out the cloth that you're in the middle of weaving. So you see 2 more. Now, the original approach argues on that. The Chachamim argue on that. Obviously, the argument is, are these considered to be a tolda or not? Rabbi Yehuda says that you could consider them to be toldas, but there are separate chiv chatais for them. And the Chachamim there, who argues that there are only 39, said that you can't have a separate chiv chatais for these because they are toldas. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda says that these two toldas also get a separate chiv chatas. So he holds you can have a separate chiv chatas for an av and a tolda, even though it was performed in one mistake. The says no, that's not the pshat over here. The pshat over here is just that Rabbi Yehuda holds that there are 49 avos malachos. There are 41. He adds 2 to the 39. There are 41. But he does agree that an av and a tolda can only combine to one chiv chatas. And I can even prove this to you, because if you look at the language of the Brisa, it says Rabbi Yehuda adds 2 more. That means he's adding to the list of the 39, he's making it 41. Okay. Now, we even have a statement of Rabbi and Rav Yosef here on the original case of Rabbi Yehuda, where a person threw an object from Rishos HaYachid into Rishos HaRabim, and then it traveled 4 amas. That's only one chiv chatas, just like we've been trying to say here. Now the Gemara says, hold on a second. How does that case work? How is there any chiv chatas? If the guy wanted it to stop as soon as it entered Rishos HaRabim, why should there be a chiv chatas about its later travel, where it travels another 4 amas? Meaning we had originally said that there were 2 chatos there, but he can't intend both of them if he wanted it to stop right away. So that's a chiv chatas. But then when it travels 4 more amas, he didn't want that, so there's no chiv chatas for that. And if he wanted it to travel all the way to the end, so then there's a chiv chatas for that. But why should be a chiv chatas separately for when it originally enters Rishos HaRabim? He didn't want it to stop there. So the Gemara says the answer is very simple. He didn't care where it stops. He wanted it to go into Rishos HaRabim, and he didn't care. So this thing stopped halachically twice. Freeze frame as soon as it enters Rishos HaRabim, and then it goes another 4 amas, and it stops there. So that's 2 separate chiv chatas. The Gemara now asks a question on a slightly related subject, which will then come back around to this. The question is, we know that if somebody performs part of a malacha that he intended to do, he is still in violation. So, for example, if he wanted to throw something 8 amas and it flew only 4 amas, or he wanted to write the name Shimon and he just wrote Shin Mem, so he wrote the name Shem, so he still did a malacha. So he's chayav for that. That's an Isser D'Oraisa right there. The question is, what if he intended to throw an object 4 amas and it actually flew 8 amas? So it did not accomplish what he intended it to do. It went much further. Does that count or not? So the Gemara says, based on our discussion between Ravina and Rav Ashi, it's clear that doesn't count. Ravina and Rav Ashi were discussing why Rabbi Yehuda should hold that one has a chiv chatas if it flew into Rishos HaRabim and then went further. And the question was, well, it didn't do what he wanted, so how could it be 2 chiv chatas? And the Gemara came up with a way that it was not, what actually happened was not a contradiction to what he wanted. That shows that no matter what, if what you wanted doesn't happen, if it varies from what you happened, that you haven't violated Isser D'Oraisa, you don't have to bring a carbon chatas for that. So even your original assumption, the Gemara says, is wrong. If you want to throw 8 amas and only threw 4, you're not chai for that either. Now the Gemara says, when you wanted to write Shimon and you wrote Shem, you just wrote the first 2 letters, there you are chai. That I agree, because you can't write Shimon without writing Shem first. So you intended to first write Shem, and then you intended to add on to that. But you accomplished what you intended, you just didn't finish. But here, where you wanted to throw 8 amas and it flew 4, you didn't want it to fly 4 and then land. You wanted it to fly 8 in one shot. So it never really fulfilled what you wanted. What actually happened was never intended by you. You never intended for such a thing to happen, and therefore that's not a chiv d'oraisa. Okay, we will end Daf Tzad here.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.